Ethan had never met anyone like Dr. Lizzie before. On most days, he kept to himself inside the research station on Cora 7, quietly working through data logs, checking environmental gauges, and updating reports no one ever read twice. He liked quiet routines, predictable schedules, and the calm feeling of knowing what came next. Unfortunately, none of those things existed when the alien biologist arrived. Dr. Lysay was from the Veyari, a gentle science-focused species known for their soft voices, brilliant minds, and unusual appearance. Her skin shimmered faint blue under the station lights, like frost touched by sunrise. 4 small tendrils framed her face where humans had hair, moving slightly when she thought deeply. Most humans found the Veyari calming. Ethan found them intimidating, especially her. The moment she arrived, she had been curious about him. She asked about his hobbies, his work habits, his Earth background, and even what he liked to eat during long shifts. It wasn't rude curiosity. It felt more like she genuinely wanted to understand him, but that only made Ethan avoid her more. Every time she entered a room, he quietly moved to another. If she asked a question, he gave short answers. If she smiled, he panicked inside and pretended he had somewhere else to be. Most people thought Ethan avoided trouble. In truth, he avoided attention. And Lysay's attention felt like standing beneath a bright light, with no shadows left to hide in. The station crew began to notice, especially because Lysay had practically made Ethan her main research puzzle. She didn't mean to, but humans were new to her. And Ethan was the first human she had worked beside for more than a few hours. Instead of taking his distance as a lack of interest, she mistook it for a biological pattern she had not yet documented. So she kept watching him from afar, trying to figure it out like a puzzle in motion. For 10 days, this continued. Ethan hid, Lysay wondered. The crew teased him, he denied it. The only person who didn't know the truth was Lysay herself. And that truth stayed hidden until the 11th day, in a hallway filled with warm lights and quiet humming machinery. Ethan had been carrying a container of nutrient samples to the lower lab. His steps were steady, practiced, calm. Then he turned a corner and froze like he had walked into a wall. Lysay stood directly in front of him, her soft eyes bright and focused on him like she had been waiting. "Ethan," she said gently. His heart skipped. His grip tightened on the container. "I was hoping to find you." He cleared his throat. Is something wrong with the samples?" "No," she said, smiling lightly. "Something is wrong with us." His mind almost dropped the container. "Us?" "Yes." She stepped closer, not threatening, simply curious. Her tendrils flicked thoughtfully. "You have been avoiding me. Every time I enter a room, you leave. Every time I ask something, you step away. Have I done something harmful? Did I misunderstand a human custom?" Ethan's throat tightened. He tried looking away, but she moved slightly to stay in his line of sight. "I do not wish to make you uncomfortable," she said, her voice softening even more, "but I am a biologist. When a creature behaves unexpectedly, I must understand why. Please tell me, Ethan. Why do you avoid me?" He felt cornered, not by force but by honesty. He didn't want to lie, yet saying the truth felt embarrassing in a way he couldn't describe. Still, he knew she wouldn't leave without an answer. And she deserved one. He exhaled slowly. "You didn't do anything wrong." Her eyes widened. "Then why?" "Because," he said, swallowing hard. "You're extremely smart. Extremely observant. Extremely everything. And every time you look at me, I feel like you're reading every thought in my head." Lysay blinked in surprise. "That is not possible. Veyari cannot read thoughts." "I know," he said, "but it feels like you can." She stared at him quietly for a moment, her tendrils almost frozen. He couldn't tell whether she was confused or touched. Maybe both. "You avoid me because I make you nervous?" she asked softly. He looked down. "More like overwhelmed. You're kind. You're patient. You're curious about everything I say. No one usually pays that much attention to me. I'm not used to it. She took a slow step forward, close enough that he could see faint patterns on her skin, soft glowing lines like tiny constellations. Ethan, she said gently, I pay attention because you interest me. He nearly forgot to breathe. That was the last thing he expected. She continued, humans are new to me. You, especially, are new to me. You think differently. You react differently. You hold so much inside yourself that I do not yet understand. Her expression softened even more. Avoiding me only makes you more interesting, not less. Ethan covered half his face with his hand. That makes it worse. Lysay tilted her head like she was examining a rare species. I only wish to learn. Understanding beings is my purpose. But you seem to be the only one here I cannot understand. You're not supposed to, he said quietly. I'm just me, and I want to know what me means when it comes to you. His breathing grew uneven as she stepped closer, now standing only a few inches away. He felt the soft warmth coming from her bioluminescent skin. Her eyes looked gentle, calm, almost glowing. Ethan, she said softly, why does my attention trouble you so much? He hesitated, eyes lowered, shoulders tight. He didn't want to say the next truth, but he knew it was the only real answer she would accept. Because I don't know how to act around someone I admire. Lysay froze. For the first time since arriving on the station, she looked genuinely speechless. Her tendrils went still. Her eyes widened. And her voice vanished completely. Ethan felt panic rise. Forget I said that. No, she whispered. Please repeat it. He shook his head quickly. It's embarrassing. I insist, she said, still in shock. You admire me? He sighed, defeated. Yes. I admire you. You're brilliant. You're confident. You're dedicated to your work. You're everything I'm not. She stepped even closer, so close he could see his own faint reflection in her shimmering eyes. Ethan, she whispered, you believe I am admirable? He nodded once, unable to speak. Her voice softened into something he had never heard from her, something warm, almost emotional. You think I am confident, she whispered, but the truth is, I have been worried every day that I was making you uncomfortable. I thought perhaps my species' appearance bothered you, or my voice, or my behavior. I thought maybe my curiosity offended you. She paused, her expression fragile in a way he had never seen. I thought maybe you disliked me. He stared at her in shock. What? No, never. Her tendrils fluttered in relief, glowing slightly. Then why did you not speak to me? Because when I try, he murmured, I feel stupid. She blinked. You are not stupid. You say that, he muttered. But when you talk about genetic patterns or micro-ecosystems, I can barely keep up. That does not make you lesser, she replied. It means we learn different things. And I admire that too. She paused, then added carefully, everything you struggle to say, I struggle to understand. Not your words, your reactions, your expressions. Humans are new to me. You are new to me. I do not want to upset you. Ethan finally met her gaze fully. You never upset me. You just confuse me. And you confuse me, she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. More than any species I have studied. They stood in silence, the hallway lights humming softly above them. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was a realization, forming quietly between them like a bridge neither expected. Lysay slowly lifted one hand, hesitating before she extended it closer to him. May I? She asked gently. Ethan swallowed. May you what? Touch your hand, she said. Vayari learned through contact. But I did not try before because I feared you would retreat again. His heart hammered. Okay. She placed her cool, shimmering hand lightly against his palm. The faint bioluminescence traveled across her fingers, warming gently as it reached his skin. Ethan shivered. Not in fear, but in wonder. Lysay looked at their joined hands with the fascination of a scientist discovering a new universe. "I understand something now," she whispered. "Your avoidance was not anger or rejection. It was fear of being seen." He nodded weakly. "Pretty much. And you believe I see you," she added softly. "Yes," he whispered. "And that's the problem." Her tendrils fluttered again, glowing brighter. "Then, I will learn how to see you gently." Ethan didn't move. He barely breathed. Lysay's words felt calm, patient, and somehow comforting. She wasn't mocking him. She wasn't analyzing him. She wasn't treating him like an experiment. She was simply understanding him, or trying to. She slowly released his hand, though her fingers lingered a moment longer than necessary. "Ethan," she said, "may I request something?" He hesitated. "What?" "Do not avoid me tomorrow." He looked away shyly. "I'll try." "It is enough," she said with a rare, soft smile. "Because now I understand." He blinked. "Understand what?" "That you avoid me," she whispered. "Because you admire me. And because you fear I might not admire you back." Her voice grew gentle. "But I do admire you, Ethan." His breath caught. Lysay stepped back slowly, her expression warm. Her glowing patterns faint but visible. "Tomorrow," she said quietly. "Let us begin again. This time, without fear." And with that, she walked past him, leaving Ethan standing in the quiet hallway, stunned, breathless, and wondering how everything had changed with a single, honest answer. He had left her speechless. And somehow, she had left him even more so. Ethan barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lysay's expression again, those soft, glowing eyes, the calm surprise on her face, the way her tendrils had frozen when he admitted the truth. Her quiet words replayed over and over. "I do admire you, Ethan." He kept telling himself it wasn't a big deal. It was just an honest conversation. She was just being polite, maybe even comforting him so he wouldn't feel embarrassed. But no matter how hard he tried to convince himself, he couldn't erase the warmth he had seen in her voice and in her eyes. The next morning felt different. The station lights flickered on. The same routine hum filled the corridors. And people walked the halls half awake. Same as always. Yet everything inside Ethan felt like someone had moved the walls of the universe just a little, and he had no idea how to face her. He stood in front of the mirror in his small bunk room, brushing his hair for the first time in weeks with actual effort. "Stupid," he muttered to himself. "She won't care how you look." But his hands kept adjusting his collar anyway. After a long breath, he stepped into the hallway. His heart raced as he made his way toward the lab. Every step brought more tension, more questions, more nervous thoughts he couldn't shut down. Would she act normal? Would she pretend nothing happened? Would she ask for more answers? Would she stand close to him again, like yesterday? He wasn't ready for any of it. But when he reached the lab door, he didn't have time to prepare. The door slid open, and Lysay was already inside, gently rearranging samples on a hovering tray. She turned at the sound of the door and saw him. Her eyes brightened immediately. "Good morning, Ethan." That simple greeting made his chest tighten. It wasn't just a greeting, it felt soft, genuine, warm, as if she had waited for him. He cleared his throat. "Morning." She approached him slowly, her tendrils fluttering in a calm, steady rhythm he had learned to recognize. She was curious, but not anxious today. She seemed different too, but he couldn't tell how. Maybe more relaxed, maybe more open. "I am glad you did not avoid me," she said gently. "Well, I said I'd try. And you succeeded," she answered with a small smile. "That is enough." He didn't know what to do with that softness, so he just nodded awkwardly. Lysay picked up a datapad and held it out to him. "I made a list of tasks for today that I believe we can complete together. If that is acceptable?" He hesitated before taking it. "Yeah, sure." Her eyes softened. "Do not force yourself. If working beside me creates discomfort, I wish to know." "It doesn't," he said quickly. "I mean, maybe a little, but not in a bad way." She blinked, in thoughtful confusion. There is a bad way and a good way to be uncomfortable? He rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, kind of. You make me nervous, but it's not unpleasant. It's just new. Lizzie stared at him for a long moment, as if analyzing a strange but interesting organism. I understand, she whispered. Then let us be new together. The way she said that almost made him forget to breathe. They worked side by side for the next hours, and Ethan found it both easier and harder than he expected. Easier because Lysay didn't push him, didn't crowd him, didn't overwhelm him with too many questions. Harder because every time she stood close enough for him to feel her faint warmth, he felt his heartbeat jump. At one point, while they were checking the growth chambers for the tiny native insects they were studying, her hand brushed his, barely, lightly. Like she was testing whether he would move away. He didn't. She looked up, her eyes widening slightly. She didn't comment. She simply stayed close. Her presence quiet but steady, like she was letting him know she was there without demanding anything. At lunch, she walked beside him to the cafeteria. Normally, Ethan sat alone in a corner. This time, he hesitated, unsure what to do. Lysay looked at him, tilting her head slightly. Ethan, is something wrong? He gestured weakly toward the crowded tables. I usually sit over there. She looked around the room, examining the available spots. Do you prefer quiet spaces? She asked gently. Yeah, kind of. Her tendrils lifted softly, like she understood. Then, we sit in the quiet space. He blinked. We? Yes. If you will allow me. Her voice softened. Unless you wish to eat alone, he swallowed. No. You can come. She smiled, not with her mouth. Her species didn't smile the same way humans did, but with her eyes, which glowed with a quiet warmth. She followed him to his corner table and sat gracefully, folding her legs the way her species did. For a while, they ate in silence. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. But Lysay, being Lysay, eventually spoke. Ethan, she said softly. May I ask another question? He nearly choked on his drink. Already? She tilted her head. I have been patient all morning. He sighed. Okay. Shoot. Do you still feel overwhelmed by my attention today? He stared at the table. A little. Because I watch you too closely? No. Because I stand too near? No. Because I ask too many questions? No. She thought for a moment, then asked gently. Then why? He hesitated, then quietly said, because today, you feel closer. I don't know how to handle that. Lysay placed her hands on the table, palms upward, a Vayari gesture of openness and honesty. Ethan, she said gently, I only feel closer because I now know you do not dislike me. I never disliked you, he said quickly. And because, she added slowly, you admire me. His cheeks flushed. Do you really have to repeat that? Yes, she answered, as if it were a scientific necessity. Because when you said it, something changed inside me. Ethan looked up, surprised. Changed? Lysay looked down at her glowing hands. I have studied many species. I have learned many behaviors. But admiration, from someone I admire. She paused, trying to find the right words. It feels new and important. Ethan's heart thudded. Lysay, he said softly. Do you admire me as a subject for study or as a person? Lysay. On the say. She looked up immediately. As a person. A very unusual person. You think deeply but speak little. You fear being misunderstood. Yet you try to understand others. You pretend to be simple. But you are not. He felt his throat tighten. Lysay continued. Yesterday, when you admitted your truth, I felt something I have not felt before. It stayed with me through the night. I wished to speak with you again. I wished to understand the way you think. I wished to stand beside you without you leaving. Ethan stared at her. You really felt that? Yes, she whispered. Your honesty changed my behavior. His heart pounded so hard he wondered if she could hear it. After lunch, they returned to their tasks. But something between them had shifted. They moved more in sync. Their steps matched. Their conversations flowed more naturally, and every time their hands brushed, neither pulled away. Later that afternoon, they had to check the micro-ecosystem chamber, a large observation room filled with plants from Cora 7's forest floor. When the door closed behind them, the room dimmed softly, glowing with the light of bioluminescent vines. Ethan breathed in slowly. This place always looks like magic. Lysay walked forward, her skin glowing in harmony with the plants. This room is the closest thing I have to home, she said softly. Ethan watched her fingers trail lightly along a vine that brightened at her touch. Her movements were graceful, almost gentle enough to calm even the air around her. He stepped beside her, and they both stood quietly, watching the soft lights. Lysay spoke first. Ethan, may I ask another personal question? He smiled weakly. I knew it was coming. Your answer yesterday, she said softly. Was it difficult to say? Very, he replied without hesitation. Then why did you say it? He drew in a slow breath. Because you deserved honesty. And because I was tired of hiding. Lysay stepped closer, their shoulders almost touching. I am glad you stopped hiding. Ethan looked at her glowing face. And I'm glad you listened. She seemed to study his expression for a moment, her eyes gentle. Then, very slowly, she lifted her hand again, hesitating, giving him a chance to pull away if he wanted. He didn't. She placed her cool hand against his once more, their palms meeting softly. The bioluminescent warmth spread through her fingers, reaching his skin in a gentle pulse. We can learn each other, she whispered. Ethan felt breathless. Learn each other? Yes, she whispered. Not as biologist and subject. Not as alien and human. But as... She struggled for the right word, her tendrils fluttering lightly, as two beings who wish to understand one another. Ethan swallowed hard. Yeah, he said quietly. I'd like that. For a moment, they stood there in silence, surrounded by glowing vines and soft blue light. The air felt warm, safe, close. Neither of them moved. Then a soft alarm beeped above them. Lysay blinked. The growth chamber cycle has completed. We must record observations. Ethan laughed lightly. Right, back to work. They finished the final tasks together, their hands brushing, voices soft, eyes meeting more often than ever before. When the day ended, Ethan walked her to her quarters not because she needed protection, but because she paused and waited for him before leaving the hall. At her door, she turned to him. Ethan. Yeah? I learned something important today. What? She lifted her hand again, almost touching his cheek, but she stopped just short. Your presence changes my thoughts. He felt his breath catch. In a good way or a bad way? In a new way, she whispered. He couldn't speak. Lysay stepped back slowly, her eyes glowing softly in the dim hallway. Tomorrow, she said gently. Will you stay beside me again? He nodded. Yeah, I will. Her tendrils fluttered in a soft wave of relief and warmth. Then good night, Ethan. Good night. Lysay. She entered her room, and the door closed behind her. Ethan stood there long after she was gone, his heart racing not with fear, but with something new, warm, and quietly overwhelming. And for the first time since arriving on Cora 7, he didn't feel alone. He felt chosen. The next morning, Ethan woke up feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time, excitement mixed with nervous warmth. His mind kept replaying the moment Lysay stood at her door, her tendrils glowing with gentle emotion as she whispered, Tomorrow, will you stay beside me again? He got dressed slowly, trying not to overthink it, though he absolutely failed. He checked his reflection twice, then 3 times, then sighed at himself. She doesn't care how you look, he muttered. But that didn't stop him from adjusting his shirt again. When he stepped into the hallway, the station felt different, like he wasn't walking into a routine but towards something new. Something important. And when he reached the lab, Lysay was already waiting. She stood near the entrance, hands folded in front of her, her skin glowing softly. The moment she saw him, her eyes brightened in a warm, unmistakable way. "Good morning, Ethan." His chest tightened. "Morning." She stepped closer, stopping only a short distance from him. "You came," she said softly. "I said I would, and I believed you," she whispered. "But seeing you here, it feels good." Seeing, for a moment, neither moved. Her tendrils twitched gently, not in confusion this time, but in something closer to happiness. Then she turned toward the workstation. "I prepared tasks again," she said calmly. "But we do not have to follow them strictly today. Much of the work is already stable." "Well, so what do we do instead?" Ethan asked. She looked back at him with a soft glow. "We learn each other." His heart made an uncomfortable jump. "Learn each other?" "Yes." She moved closer. "Yesterday, you said you would like that." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I still would." "Then we begin," she said gently, "with something simple." She stepped even closer, closer than yesterday, close enough for Ethan to feel the faint warmth of her bioluminescent skin. She lifted her hand, hesitated, and then touched his wrist with light pressure. "This gesture," she whispered, "means trust to my species." Ethan swallowed. "And you're giving that to me?" "I already did," she said softly. "This is only the sign of it." He didn't know how to respond, so he simply let her keep her hand there, feeling the faint hum from her fingertips. Lizzie studied his face quietly, her eyes filled with gentle curiosity. "Ethan," she said, "may I tell you something unusual?" "Everything you say is unusual," he replied with a small smile. "Go ahead." She tilted her head, her tendrils moving softly like petals in a breeze. "I slept better last night than I ever have on this station." He blinked. "Really?" "Yes." Her voice grew soft. "Because your honesty removed a fear I did not realize I carried." "What fear?" "That you disliked me," she whispered. "That every time you left the room, it was because I failed to understand you." He shook his head. "Never. I know that now." Her voice warmed. "Your words changed something in me." Ethan looked down, embarrassed and warmed at the same time. "You seem different today." "Different is correct," she admitted. "Yesterday, I believed you admired me. Today, I find myself admiring you more." Ethan's breath caught. "Why?" "Why? Because you told the truth even when it frightened you," she said softly. "Because you try to understand others even when you think you are failing. Because you notice small details. Because you care more than you say." He couldn't find words. Lise continued, "You are quiet, Ethan, but not empty. You hide, but not because of cruelty. You hide because you feel deeply." Her fingers slid from his wrist to his palm, lacing lightly with his. "And that makes you interesting in a way I cannot ignore." His heart pounded. No one had ever said something like that to him. Not on Earth. Not in training. Not anywhere. And then, suddenly, her tendrils folded back gently, a sign of nervousness. "May I ask something bold?" she whispered. Ethan felt a jolt of fear and curiosity. "Ask." "When you said you admired me, did you mean admiration as respect, or as attraction?" He froze, his mind scrambled, his heart hammered. He tried to respond, but the words stuck in his throat. Lise stepped closer, her eyes steady but soft. "I will not be upset by either answer. I only want truth." He swallowed hard. "Both?" he said finally, barely audible. "Respect and attraction." Her eyes widened, glowing softly in surprise. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Both?" Ethan nodded, unable to look at her. Lizzie didn't move at first. Instead, she studied his expression, her tendrils flicking in slow waves. She lifted her other hand and gently touched the side of his face. He stiffened, not out of fear but shock. "Ethan," she said softly, "in my species, attraction is rare. It does not happen easily. It is earned through trust, understanding, and time. It cannot be forced. It cannot be predicted. Her eyes softened deeply, and I feel it. Beginning. He felt a rush of warmth through his chest, stronger than anything he expected. You feel it? Yes. Her voice shook slightly. Because when you look at me, your silence speaks more than your words ever have. His breath caught. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know where to put his hands. He didn't know how to breathe properly. Lysay stepped back slightly, giving him space to process. If this is uncomfortable, tell me. No, he said quickly. It's not uncomfortable. Just new. New, she repeated softly. New is good. They continued working, but everything felt different. They stood close, spoke more freely, and moved with a gentle awareness of each other. Ethan found himself opening up, telling small stories from Earth, silly mistakes he made as a trainee, things he never shared with anyone. Lysay listened with full attention, her eyes warm, her tendrils flicking calmly. She asked thoughtful questions, not out of analysis but genuine curiosity. Hours passed without either noticing. At one point, Ethan reached for a small tool on the table, and Lysay's hand reached for the same one. Their hands touched, lingered, stayed. Neither pulled away. Ethan looked at her. Are we still learning each other? Yes, she whispered. And I am learning that humans practice accidental contact far more often than Vayari. You think that was accidental? He asked, his voice almost trembling. She hesitated, glowing softly. Was it not? He shook his head slowly. Not entirely. Lysay's tendrils froze in surprise. Oh. They both stood there, hands touching, eyes locked, neither willing to move. But then, a sudden vibration shook the station, an alert. Lights flickered as an emergency message chimed through the halls. Ethan and Lysay snapped out of their moment. Lysay stepped back. Environmental breach in Section 4. That is the greenhouse walkway. Ethan tensed. There were cracks in the paneling last week. Didn't they say they would fix those? Apparently not, Lysay said, already moving fast. They ran through the station, their footsteps synchronized. The breach wasn't dangerous enough to destroy the station, but it could damage the lab's micro-ecosystems, and those were her life's work. When they reached Section 4, a large panel had indeed cracked, and the walkway's air pressure was dropping. But what shocked Ethan was that Lysay stepped forward without hesitation. He grabbed her arm. Lysay, wait. It's not safe. She looked at him, eyes steady. I know how to stabilize the system, but I need time. You're not going in alone, he said. She shook her head. It is too dangerous for both of us inside. I don't care, Ethan said. I'm going with you. Her tendrils fluttered, stunned. You would risk danger for me? Of course, he said firmly. You're not facing this alone. Lysay stared at him, something shifting in her expression. Your species, she whispered. Your courage. It is different. It is strong. Nowant, Ethan squeezed her hand. We fix it together, she nodded, and they stepped into the damaged walkway. The pressure was dropping, but the suits sealed them from major risk. Lysay moved quickly to the controls, trying to reroute the pressure locks. Ethan held one of the broken panels in place, using his full strength to keep it from collapsing. The strain was heavy, but he refused to give up. Lysay worked fast, but she kept glancing at him worried, impressed, overwhelmed. You are strong, she said breathlessly. I'm just holding metal, he replied. No, she said softly. You are holding fear away. For both of us. In a few tense minutes, the system stabilized. Lysay pressed the final command, and the emergency locks sealed the area. Ethan released the panel and staggered back, exhausted. Lysay rushed to him, gripping his arms. You could have been hurt. And you could have too, he said, breathless. I wasn't letting that happen. She stared at him, overwhelmed. Ethan, I am beginning to understand something. What? That admiration, she whispered, is not only yours. Before he could respond, she gently placed her forehead against her species' gesture of deep trust and connection. Her skin glowed softly, her tendrils settling behind her in calm waves. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling softly, "you changed me. You made me feel things my kind do not feel easily. You make me think differently. You make me want to be close." He stood still, hardly breathing. "Lysy," her voice dropped to a gentle whisper, "do not fear my attention anymore. Because now, I choose to give it to you." Ethan felt warmth fill his chest, stronger than anything he had ever felt. "And I choose to stay," he whispered. Lysy's eyes softened with quiet emotion. "Then we will walk forward together, in that quiet walkway, surrounded by dim lights and the fading echo of alarms." They stayed close, two beings from different worlds who finally understood each other. Not by accident, not by curiosity alone, but because admiration grew into something deeper, something gentle, something new, and neither of them wanted it to end.